Welcome back. Let's continue to this now. SANParks is gearing up for the Vision 2040 Indaba that will be held on the 3rd to the 5th of September in Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape. SANParks says it's looking forward to a transformed conservation model as well as an economic transformation initiative. Now, the initiative is part of efforts to push back against criminal activities like poaching, bulk stripping, attacks on tourists, snaring across the country. JP Louw, SANParks Head of Communications and Spokesperson, joins us now. JP, a very good afternoon to you and thank you so much for your time. I see the month of September is quite busy for SANParks. I want to talk about Vision 2040 first. Speak to us about what, in relation to the work that you do as SANParks, does Vision 2040 represent, especially as we speak about it from an economic and transformative space?
Look, and good afternoon, Unati. We come from a history as a country where conservation tended to be a very exclusive purview, a kind of discipline where many people, in fact, had a very negative experience of it. To explain it to you in more explicit terms, if you go into places like many of our national parks, Kruger National Park, to mention one of few, you will find that there are people's graves in those particular national parks. And the reason that is so is because people were removed from these spaces, fences put up, and then we implemented this model of conservation that's exclusive, what's called fortress conservation. Now, all over the world, including South Africa, I think it's now accepted that we need a more inclusive model of conservation. That's how SANParks itself came up with Vision 2040, where we set a very longer term projection, where we want to now have the type of conservation which is both inclusive and participatory in nature of a whole range of stakeholders. The communities, you may mention farmers as well. We want to include our funders, sponsors into this relationship, the private game reserves, all of the different levels of government. So ultimately, this is really the future we want to go towards, a future where when somebody sees a rhino or an elephant, they don't just say there is a rhino or elephant, but the conversation changes over to there is my rhino and there is my elephant. And why would they say that? Is because in that future, nature will be thriving, the vegetation, the heritage, cultural and natural will be thriving, but so would people. And people will be seeing how they are able to benefit directly from conservation.
Yeah, and I wanted to touch on communities that you've just also mentioned also in your response there, how Vision 2040 has essentially redefined the role of communities, especially those that are living around your national parks. You talk about it playing an important part, particularly as we speak about conservation. But when we look at past achievements and just lessons learned, I want to touch on the Rhino Initiative. That is something that you are really known for in terms of successes. Just speak to us then about, being that global leader in rhino conservation, particularly in anti-poaching strategies. What are some of the lessons learned there?
All of our safety and security measures apply a multidisciplinary solution. We use technology. We form collaborative relationships. We look at how even within our own staff complement, we can make sure that we have the right amount of people and even that we have the right people as well, because it's a matter of public record that we've had incidences where even some of those who were rangers of the past that have been arrested and some of them are in jail today. So it's a multiplicity of interventions that we use. We work with the South African National Defence Force, the police, the border authority. In a place like Kruger National Park, in fact, you can't avoid the fact that, we're next to Mozambique, and some of the issues that happens in our neighboring countries tend to spill over into South Africa. So I would really accord many of the successes we've had specifically to those collaborative relationships and that multidisciplinary type of approach to looking for a solution.
Also, I mean, when you consider SANParks, or SANParks rather, it's a major contributor when it comes to tourism. But unfortunately, many communities, particularly around the national parks, face a high unemployment. What specific economic opportunities lie in Vision 2040, do you think, especially if you speak about unlocking just some of those initiatives for the many communities we speak of?
Well, from the side of SANParks, I mean, I can say to you that when we look at our own financial performance, we can see that we are essentially now sort of like making it to even beyond the numbers that we were just before COVID-19, that we're heading in that direction. And of course, now what we're looking at is that how do you then make sure this can spill over into the communities? There's a community, for example, called Cookhouse in the Eastern Cape, which we are working with in this model of conservation of Vision 2040. Essentially, maybe to explain it and try to be as simple as possible, what we're looking towards is to establish, in fact, we've started with the establishment of what's called mega living landscapes. And the way to think of that kind of like landscape, it's vast land. So wherever you know as the border of the national park, whoever is the neighbor of the national park becomes part of that mega living landscape, and the neighbor to that neighbor, and then the neighbor to that neighbor. So it means it's landscapes, and even into the seascapes as well become part of this. So communities who then would be on this kind of like strips, we'll be looking at all kinds of initiatives where we'd be looking on the one hand of how we make sure that there's a broader benefit sharing, much as we're also looking at nature, because part of what we want to make sure happens well is that nature itself must thrive. And really it's through this sort of like collaborative ways that we would work. SANParks already, by the way, from 1994, has been doing all kinds of projects to support communities. You go to Tsitsikamma, for example, you find some anglers there who will tell you how they've benefited from SANParks. You go to places like Agulhas, where we've even provided a bus, for example, for communities to benefit. But what we now want to do is to call it check up much more higher level, the level of intentionality of making sure that conservation is a meaningful contributor to the economy.
Absolutely, particularly because, if one knows Cookhouse on your way to Gqeberha in the Eastern Cape, the levels of unemployment and poverty are quite shocking there. But let's move now to another announcement that you've just recently made as SANParks, the week of free access. I think a lot of South Africans look forward to this particular week. So it runs from the 22nd of September to the 26th of September. Talk to us about what this initiative actually entails.
Well, SANParks Week essentially is intended to allow South Africans free day passes into our national parks. So for that whole week, all of the parks will be able to access. There are a selected number of parks that also include an extra 2 days to that. I think it takes us to 27, 28 of September. So really, as a South African, you don't need to have anything other than your identification to be able to access the national park. Please remember, it's a day pass. It doesn't mean that you can get free accommodation. It doesn't mean things like free food and those sorts of like aspects as well. And of course, ultimately also, we want to make sure that even our communities in particular, what sometimes would be a park they feel they can't access because of particular fees, that they can really make good use of this opportunity and the gem. There are all kinds of activities organized. SANParks runs 21 functional national parks. So there'll even be environmental education effort underway. Our rangers, our environmental education colleagues, various colleagues will be at hand. So when you go to the SANParks website, which is www.sanparks.org, there you'll be able to get some more specific details about which parks can you go to and even what kind of activities to expect when you're there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, JP, for that. Of course, lots of fun for many South Africans to look forward to. JP Louw, SANParks Head of Communications and a spokesperson there.